Well, the job of ensuring Crown Casino is properly regulated ultimately falls to Gaming and Consumer Affairs Minister Michael O'Brien, and he joins me now in the studio. Welcome, Minister.
Good evening, Josie.
Will the government investigate the claims that we've heard in that story?
Well, it's certainly interested to see those claims. What I'd say, Josie, is that if Professor Hancock or others have got evidence that support the sort of allegations that have been made, and I accept that some of the allegations are serious, the people to investigate those are the regulators. We have an independent gaming regulator, the Victorian Commission for Gambling Regulation. We have an independent liquor licensing commissioner. We have Victoria Police. If there are breaches of criminal laws, they should be investigated by those bodies. If there are breaches of codes of conduct, they should be investigated by those bodies. But there does need to be evidence, I would have thought, to support the claims.
Isn't it evidence enough that people have come forward?
Well, if people are making allegations, that is one thing, but I think any regulator would say that there needs to be something to suggest there is some substance behind it. I'm not prejudging any of these claims that are being made. I'm saying that those claims should be brought to the attention of the regulator, and the regulator should determine whether they should be investigated based on available evidence.
On the issue of alcohol service within Crown, the Compliance Directorate has told us that in the last 2 years there have been just 10 liquor licence inspections each year on the gaming floor. Is that an acceptable level of regulation to you, given it's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week?
Well, I understand that the Crown Complex has had a much larger level of compliance visits than that. Certainly we do think, and the new government thinks, that more needs to be done in this area. That's why we're actually bringing the liquor licensing and gaming regulator together under one roof. That means we'll be able to effectively double the number of inspectors, because previously inspectors who could only look at gaming issues will be able to look at liquor licensing issues and vice versa. So we'll be training up the workforce, ensuring that they have more capacity to look at both gaming and liquor issues, and that way we'll have more scrutiny.
So you can see there hasn't been an appropriate level of scrutiny, particularly around the area of alcohol service?
Well, I think there certainly needs to be more scrutiny, and that's why we're changing the way regulation is undertaken in this state to achieve that end.
On gambling, the government expects to receive $76 million more than it did last year in gambling revenue, partly due to Crown's expanded licensing deal. Does that make the government indebted to Crown?
I certainly don't think the government is indebted to Crown. The increase in tax revenue from Crown Casino comes as a result of arrangements pushed through by the Brumby government in the last year or so of the former government. We do, though, accept the community is concerned that governments may be seen to have a conflict of interest. That's why the election policy we took to the last election involves creation of a new body, the Victorian Responsible Gambling Foundation. This will be arm's length from me as Minister and arm's length from the government. We're going to give it more resources than has ever been spent on problem gambling in Victoria, $150 million over 4 years. And this body, independent of government, will be able to make decisions relating to problem gambling, treatment, research, advertising and communications.
Can we turn now to your energy portfolio and your announcement that came late on federal budget day that the government was walking away any attempt to close down Australia's dirtiest power station, that being Hazelwood, despite your previous commitment to its phased closure. Was that a dishonest commitment?
Well, Josie, there was no commitment this government made to the phased closure of Hazelwood.
You said before the election you supported the idea, though.
No, the former government made a commitment to do that. We said we were sceptical because we wanted to know the answers to some questions.
But you helped pass the legislation.
Well, there was no legislation to close Hazelwood, Josie. What we said when the former Brumby government elected to pursue a policy to bring forward the closure of Hazelwood, we asked a few questions. How much was it going to cost? Do we have the money for it? Where is the replacement power going to come from? What's going to be the impact on power prices? And what's going to be the impact on regional jobs? Now, we said we needed to know the answers to those questions before we could responsibly decide whether we could support it or not. Now, when I became Minister, we started investigating the answers. And the fact is, there was no money in the budget to fund this closure, which would have cost hundreds of millions of dollars.
Sorry, I'll just clarify. I think you helped pass the legislation that was at the target of achieving a 20% cut of carbon emissions by 2020. But surely that then is a factor. Let's go to that, which this week you've now said is an aspirational target. Are you walking away from that commitment as well?
Well, when that legislation came before the Parliament, we asked the former Brumby government, which introduced it, is this a legally binding target? And the answer we received was a clear no. It was never a legally binding target. We accept that Victorians want to do more to help clean up the environment. We understand that. The lesson that we've had to learn, though, from the former government is that having empty gestures, hollow rhetoric, doesn't actually achieve practical outcomes. We saw the Auditor-General table a report in Parliament earlier this year which, for the Auditor-General, seriously attacked the former government's renewable energy policies because it said it was basically all based on rhetoric and spin and there was no substance to it. We don't want to go down the same path. We'd like to have practical solutions to these issues, and we think that that is the way to actually achieve some positive environmental outcomes.
Has your government made a conscious decision that it's more important politically to keep a lid on electricity power bills rising rather than deal with environmental issues?
Well, we think you can do both, Josie. We introduced a year-round extension to the electricity concession. So previously concession card holders only got a 6-month concession on their electricity bills. We've extended that to year-round. So that's something practical we can do to try and help struggling families with their power bills. But we also want to spend more money on promoting the growth of renewable generation and low emission generation.
On Hazelwood, if I can just pin you on that one, will negotiations with the company to phase out Hazelwood now abandoned for good, or can they resume at any point?
Well, we don't think that asking the Victorian taxpayer to pay hundreds of millions of dollars to bring forward the closure of Hazelwood was going to be a good environmental outcome. The Latrobe Valley Sustainability Group this week said that that policy proposal was in fact premature and would have led to the unnecessary loss of jobs. And the other point, Josie, is that because the former government hadn't had any base load electricity in the line to replace it, you wouldn't have replaced Hazelwood with wind or solar, you would have replaced it with black coal generation from Queensland or New South Wales.
We'll have to leave it there, Minister. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thanks very much, Josie.